the wider context of how to deal with one of the biggest tragedies that chas v'shalom nobody should know of it. But unfortunately, it's not uncommon today for children to leave the derech of their parents. And I don't know if you can imagine what a parent feels when a child leaves the things which are most important to them. And obviously, you would want to do anything that you can to prevent it. And one of the things that we're going to see is that davka, where you're at in life at the age of 18, 19, and 20, that is really where the solution is, part of the solution. And what we're going to talk about is a very innocent Gemara in Masechet Psachim, which has 5 totally different explanations of how to explain that Gemara. And the Gemara is an opportunity for each of the Rishonim to declare their anim amin, their educational message, how to keep children at the Seder table. And also, as we'll see, is the same message how to keep children on the derech for the whole life. Now, it's sort of like, you all know the Rorschach ink blot? Have you seen this before? What this blot is, most of you probably know, is that everybody sees something totally different here. Some people see bats. Some people see a spaceship. The most interesting answer that I ever got, there was a student who said, it looks like 2 parents who are fighting over a child. And I happen to know that her parents had not too long before undergone a difficult divorce. And Bekitzur, when you see something, you see that which is going on in your head. And let's see together the Gemara Masechet Psachim, source number 1. Just by a show of hands, how many of you have the sheets in front of you? Kol hakavod. Source number 1, Masechet Psachim Kuftet Amud Aleph. Amru alav Rabbi Akiva, shaya mechalek klayot ve'egozim letinokot be'erev Pesach, kedei shelo yishnu ve'yishalu. Rabbi Akiva, who was a master educator, he had 24,000 students. What did he do on Erev Pesach to make sure that the children will not fall asleep? He used to give out treats, chocolate, nuts. And by the way, Rav Kook in his commentary on the Haggadah points out that this is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, just like all mitzvot d'Rabbanan. Just like maror bizman hazeh is midrabanan, drinking the 4 kosot is midrabanan. It's the same rabbis who said that you should give out goodies to children to keep them awake during the Seder. And that was his trick. Then the Gemara continues with a braita. Tanya, Rabbi Lezer Omer, chotfin matzot b'leilei psachim b'shvil tinokot shelo yishnu. Chotfin, everybody admits, everybody knows, is to grab. Matzot, you all know what matzah is. Everybody says we grab the matzot on Leil Pesach so that the children will not fall asleep. Now, for most of you, what does this sound like? What does this ring a bell from the Leil Seder in your families? Afikoman. And in fact, the Rambam is going to say that this is the source for that. It's an ancient minhag of stealing the Afikoman to keep the kids awake. Let's see it inside in the Rambam in source number 2. You have to do things different on this night so that they should ask, why is this night different from all other nights? I will never forget my first Leil Seder, where I had the opportunity of having a 4-year-old child, my oldest son, Netanel, who was old enough to understand Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. So I was really excited to fulfill a mitzvah that I had never done before. And the day before Erev Pesach, we put him to sleep early so that he'll go to sleep late. And then again on Erev Pesach, put him to sleep in the afternoon so that he'll be up late at night. Shalom Ira. And when I came home from shul, I gave my son a piece of chocolate, just like Rabbi Akiva suggests. And all of you probably know or will know when you have children that when, especially by your oldest children, you really try and do things idealistically. And we did not have candy and chocolate in the house, but he knew from his grandparents what chocolate is, but he knew that we don't like him to eat chocolate. And here's Abba's giving me a piece of chocolate. So he asks me innocently, Abba, what bracha do I make on this? Because he's not used to eating chocolate. I say shakol, makes a quick shakol, puts it in his mouth before I take it away. And then I give him another piece of chocolate. And now he's suspicious. And he looks at me, and he looks at my wife, and he puts it in his mouth. And then I give him a third piece of chocolate. And this time, he says to me in classic Israeli Hebrew, he says, Abba, ma pitom ata noten li chocolate? Since when do you give me chocolate? And that ma pitom is manishtana. In other words, we try and get our children not to recite the famous manishtana word for word where they understand or they might not understand, but the real idea is to get our children to ask, ma pitom, what is going on? Why are things different tonight? So the Rambam says back in source number 2, we're trying to get them curious. Why is this night different from other nights? Ad sheyashiv lahem v'yomar lehem kach v'kach ira, kach v'kach haya, so that we can then tell them the story that on this date, 3,300 years ago, Hashem took us out of Egypt. And continues the Rambam, v'ketzad mishaneh. How do we do things different? B'chalek lehem klayot ve'egozim, give out goodies like we saw, the Rabbi Akiva. Ve'okrim hashulchan milifnehem kodem sheyochlu. If you're from a Sephardic family, they actually do this where they bring the table and they take it away and they bring it and they take it away. And that's to get the kids to ask what's going on. In the Ashkenazic families where the tables were always big, they don't move the table, but what they do is they cover the matzot. And it's such a small action, usually children don't even realize that something got changed. But really the idea is to get them to ask what's tonight different from other nights. And then continues the Rambam, and here's the punchline. V'chotfin matzah ze miyad ze v'chiyotze b'dvarim elu. We grab the matzah from each other, and it's fun. In other words, when the Rambam sees the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim in Daf Kuf Tet, and he says, our objective is to keep the children awake at the Seder. How do we do that? Grabbing the matzot. The Rambam says, hey, that means to make it fun. And in fact, the Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, says that what in the end is going to decide if a child is going to be religious or not, if a child is going to be like his parents or not, it all boils down to positive associations. Do I have a positive association of Torah and mitzvot? Then, when I get older, I'll want to continue. Classic example. The worst Shabbat that I ever had in my life was when my parents went away to a hotel for something, and they sent my brother and I to a family. And the father, we come home from shul, the father starts yelling at his wife. Like I never heard anybody yelling at their wife in front of company like that before. And then he starts yelling at his son, and he starts yelling at his other son, then he starts yelling at me, and he starts yelling at my brother, and he's just yelling at everyone. And I knew this man, and I had never seen him like this. To make a long story short, it was the worst Shabbat meal that I ever had. Somewhere along the line, he went to the bathroom, and his wife apologized. She said, I apologize for my husband's behavior. You have to understand, he's a heavy smoker. And on Shabbat, when he can't smoke, he gets edgy. And the end of the story is that both of his two sons are not religious because they always hated Shabbat. And why should they want to observe Shabbat? And now that sounds like an extreme story, but if you think about it, in how many homes does Friday afternoon look like just a yelling match where everyone's yelling at each other? Did you take out the garbage? Who's setting the table? I told you to take out the garbage. What about the chicken? Who's the, and did you tear the toilet paper? Everyone's yelling at each other. And that will not bring a positive association to Shabbat. Now, if we want our children to love Shabbat, we have to make sure that also the Friday afternoon is not an unpleasant situation. How to do that? Pashut, think ahead. Start preparing for Shabbat Friday morning. If need be, Thursday night. If need be, Wednesday night. But make sure, I'll give you another pointer that we do in our house. My kids, I don't know if they realize this or not. We put on, when you visit a dentist, they have these really relaxing music playing in the background. And we put on relaxing music on Friday afternoon so that the atmosphere is a positive atmosphere. When I was on Shlichut for Bnei Akiva, I also taught in a Sunday school. And towards the end of the year, one of the kids, still remember, his name was Jason. Jason says to me, he says, Rabbi, I don't think I want to be Jewish when I grow up. I didn't want to tell him you don't have a choice, but I asked him, why not? He says, because all you always teach us is that it's tough to be a Jew, where the Egyptians wanted to kill us, and the Greeks wanted to kill us, and the Persians wanted to kill us, and the Germans did kill us, and why should I want to be Jewish? And I realized that in the ears of a 12-year-old, we're doing a terrible disservice when their association with Judaism is just suffering. And as a matter of fact, maybe I should have brought the tshuva. Rav Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva where somebody asks him, what happened to American Jewry? All right, when we were in Europe, almost everybody was religious. And when we moved to America, half the people left their tefillin in Europe. The other half continued observing Shabbat, but what happened to their children? Rav Moshe Feinstein answers that what killed American Jewry was a term in Yiddish that I still remember my grandparents saying. I don't speak Yiddish, but I still remember this phrase. Oy, is schwer zu sein a Yid. It's hard to be a Jew. Anybody ever hear that? Rav Moshe Feinstein says, if kids aren't stupid, and if we keep telling them that it's hard to be a Jew and it's not fun to be a Jew, then they will not want to be Jewish. And that is point number one. That's what the Rambam says. If you want your kids to enjoy the Seder, make it fun. If you want them to enjoy Judaism to the same extent, also make it a positive association, positive experience. Now, psychologist number two, a lot of psychology tonight. Psychologist number two is Erickson. Erickson adds on another point. What is going to decide whether your children are going to be religious or not? Do they have a positive association with you? Not just do they have a positive association with Torah and mitzvot, but do I like my father? If I like my father, I will want to be like my father. And the base for comparison for every girl is her mother. And part of adolescence, part of becoming an adult, is to decide, how am I different from Ima? And on any given issue, here I will be more than Ima, here I'll be less than Ima, here I'll be the same as Ima. On every issue, you have to decide, how am I different from my mother? Now, Erickson explains that if you have a good relationship with your mother, or if your daughter has a good relationship with you, On the important issues, she will want to be like you. For example, for a religious Jew, if she knows that it's important, she will also want to be religious, and she will express her individualism, her difference, through having a different hairdo, through wearing different types of glasses, through enjoying a different type of music. But on the important ekroni, issues of principle, if your children like you, they will want to be like you. And that sounds so simple. And of course, my children will like me. And I will tell you that I've been teaching 18, 19, 20-year-olds for 30 years now. I have yet to meet a parent who doesn't love their children, but I have met a lot of people your age who don't get that message because the parents are too busy disciplining or teaching, or obviously if they're working and not spending time with you, then you're not getting enough attention. And like Adler, another famous psychologist, they're all Jewish. Actually, Erickson, I'm not sure was Jewish, but Adler, he says that everybody needs attention. And if we don't get positive attention, then we are going to try and get at least negative attention. And the easiest way of getting attention is by taking off your kippah or by using your cell phone on Shabbat. And part of the problem in religious families is, Baruch Hashem, we have a lot of children. Now you could have 5, 6 children, 7, 8 children in the family, and it's very difficult for the parents to spend quality time with each and every child. One thing for sure, if one of the children starts being Mechalil Shabbat, that child is going to get their attention. And they're going to spend time with him. They're going to take him to the rabbi. They'll take him to psychologists. He'll get all the attention he wants. And it just takes 1 second to take off your kippah. And that is why we have to make sure that we're giving children, each and every child, quality time. A good idea is just to keep a calendar to make sure that every single week you are spending quality time with this child and with this child and each one of the children. And that is, to summarize, the first point of Jewish education. How do we keep our children at the Seder? And how do we keep our children on the derech? Make Judaism fun. Have them have positive associations with Judaism and with their parents. Explanation number 2, let us look at the Meiri. Let's jump down to source number 5, where the Meiri, also one of the Rishonim, he sees this Gemara, the same words as the Rambam, but he understands them differently. He says, what does it mean we grab the matzot on Pesach so that the children will stay awake? The Meiri says in source 5, Shemitaskim ba derech hamaya v'chatifa ze mizeh. We want to show how much we love the matzah. I want the matzah. No, I want the matzah. I want the matzah. The Meiri in Masechet Kiddushin that I brought for you in source number 6 says derech gargaranut, even to look like a glutton. I want the matzah. I love. The Nemukei Yosef in source number 4, another one of the Rishonim from Spain, he also gives. He goes in the direction of the Rambam and the Meiri, where he says, what does it mean? Grab the matzot so the children don't fall asleep. Derech schok, in a fun way, that's the Rambam. V'chibuv mitzvah, that's the Meiri. And what is the educational message here? A child will notice genuine excitement. What really excites my parents? And there's I think he's a French, sounds French, psychologist named Popenu, where he says that what is childhood? Childhood is constantly shuffling and reshuffling priorities based on what a child picks up from his surroundings, most mainly his parents. I have a relative, we were once by their house, and while we were there, a plate from her set of china broke, and she went hysterical. And she started yelling, oh, that's my china, that was my favorite china, and it's so expensive, and I can't replace it, and started And as a little kid, to this day, every time I see that relative, I think of her China. And the end of the story, her children also are not religious, where their gashmiut, their physical possessions are the most important thing in their lives. And that's what they picked up from their mother. Now, there's a saying that mitzvot cannot be taught. They are caught. Because children have antennas, and they can pick up when you're genuine and when you're not. I don't know if any of you ever had, we had a non-religious teacher in elementary school who pretended she was religious, but everybody knew she wasn't religious. Anybody ever have that? And kids know, they pick these things up. And for example, if you tell your child, learning Torah is important, but in your spare time, they see that you're spending it on the internet, on Amazon, or whatever you're doing, or at work, they are shuffling their priorities and saying, yeah, she says that Torah is important, but work or Amazon or the internet or whatever it is more important. I actually remember mamash doing this myself. The first time I went to a baseball game, the rabbi of the community, he had a clergy pass. The New York Yankees, I don't know if they still have it, they give like a public service to priests and rabbis where they can take 3 children from their synagogue to a game for free. So he took 3 of us to a game. I still remember it was against the Boston Red Sox. And no offense to the Helpfinger family. The Yankees hate the Boston Red Sox. And it was a Sunday afternoon, 70,000 people in Yankee Stadium. And I don't remember the details, but everyone was yelling at one of the Red Sox comes up to bat. 70,000 people are yelling, boo, boo. And I see the rabbi in my community turning red in the face, yelling with everybody, boo. And I remember saying to myself as a 3rd grader, I said, wow, I didn't realize baseball was so important. He's really red in the face. He's really getting excited. I remember saying that to myself. Thank God that's not the end of the story, because I remember at Simchat Torah, when I was dancing behind the rabbi, you dance in a circle, and it turned out somebody left the circle, and I was dancing behind the rabbi, and I put my hand on his shoulder, and his shirt was totally wet with perspiration. He was totally hoarse. He wasn't red. He was purple. He stood up on a chair and he was yelling. And I realized that I thought baseball was important. Simchat Torah is even more important. And I remember, and that's what Papanyu says. That's exactly what I did as a child. Children shuffle and reshuffle their priorities based on where do I see genuine excitement. Now, it has to be genuine. And that's why you have to start at the age of 18 or 19 or 20. Because if you want to just, when you start having kids at the age of 25, pretending to be excited about mitzvot, it's not going to be genuine. And it's not going to work. And this is what the Alshich, I brought for you in source 7, the Alshich in Dvarim Yud Aleph Yud Tet, says on the Shema the interesting connection between Samtem and Dvarai Ele. Let's see it inside. Shakdamazu toil gam lilimud b'nechem. This is a practical benefit to teaching your children. Ki im tilamdu mibli sum dvarai ele al levavchem v'al nafshechem. If you don't put the words of the Torah inside your heart, lo yidabek bam limudchem. You don't have an ice cube's chance in hell of passing on love of Torah to your children. If it's not deep in your heart, it's not going to pass on to them. The only way you can teach to your children is if it really is deep in your heart, an emotional tie to Torah. Now, I don't know if you ever noticed, but at the end of Uva L'Tzion, every single day, we say, source number 8, Ulovdo, we ask that Hashem should help us, Lovdo b'levav shalem, to serve Hashem with all of our heart. Leman lo nigal larik, velo neled la be'ala. So that we will not toil for naught, waste our time, and have children that don't go in the right way. And again, how do you get your children to go in the right way? Lovdo belevav shalem. If a child sees that what do I do when I have free time? What do I do when I'm home with Corona and I can't leave the house? If they see that what I do is learn Torah, that is a very clear priority. I'll tell you an interesting story that I heard from Rav Yaakovson. Rav Yaakovson is a psychologist in the Haredi community, and he is the fireman to extinguish whenever a child is having problems in Cheder. They call him in. Anybody who knows the Haredi community knows that if a child is dismissed from Cheder, it's not just his problem, but his children, his wife, his sister, might also have problems finding shidduchim. So they call in Rav Yaakovson with his kid. 10-year-old was kicked out of Cheder. And Rav Yaakovson says, tell me, what's the problem? And the boy says, my teacher thinks I'm chutzpahdik. And Rav Yaakovson says, tell me what happened. So the boy tells that in the shiur, his Rebbe was giving a Parshat HaShavua. He was talking about chesed. And he was talking about the importance of doing chesed and learning sources about chesed. And at the end of the shiur, the Rebbe says, so Kinderlach, tell me, if there's one thing in the world which maybe is even more important than learning Torah, what is it? And this little boy says, Shulint. And the whole class starts laughing. And the Rebbe kicks him out. And Rav Yaakovson asked him, what did you mean when you said Shulint? He said, well, I'm just telling the truth. He says, in my family, we're 3 boys. And at each one of the Su'udot on Shabbat, each one of us is supposed to prepare a Dvar Torah. And my turn is Shabbat in the morning. And whenever I say a Dvar Torah, my father is busy eating his cholent. He doesn't listen to a word I say. At the end, he says, Yashar Koach, I'm proud of you. But if the question was, what's more important than a Dvar Torah? The answer was cholent. And the kid picked this up from his parents. And this is lesson number 2 in Jewish education. Priorities are picked up by genuine excitement. I'll give one more last example. All of us know that there's a problem speaking Lashon Hara. And part of the problem is that even in religious homes, when a child turns on a light by accident on Shabbat, what happens? Everybody jumps, says, Shabbos, Shabbos, and then he turns off the light, right? When a child speaks Lashon Hara, the parents usually don't say anything. If they do address it, they will say, that's not nice, or we don't talk Lashon Hara in the house, but they don't jump. Do you see the difference? A child isn't stupid. If he sees that everybody yells when you're Mechalel Shabbat, and they really don't care if you talk Lashon Hara, everything is set according to those priorities. I'm not saying that it's good to yell or not yell. What I'm saying is that if you are a yeller and you yell about your China or you yell about the Yankees and you're not yelling about Lashon Hara and you're not yelling about Shabbat, your children are going to pick that up. And that is something and that's what the Meiri is saying. How do you keep your kids interested in the Leil HaSeder? Show genuine excitement. I want the matzah. I love the matzah. That's point number 2. And that is what will keep them on the derech as well. Explanation number 3 of grabbing the matzah, totally different direction. The Rashbam. Let's see the Rashbam, source number 9. The Rashbam, by the way, the Rishonim that we've said until now are from Spain. So apparently that was what was in the air in Spanish education. We're moving now to Ashkenaz, where the Rashbam, he lived in France, And when he sees the term grab the matzot so that the children don't fall asleep, what does he say? Source 9. V'linireh chotfin. What does it mean, grab the matzot? Misalkin et alechem miyad tinokot. Grab the food, grab the matzah away from the children, shelo yu yeshenim mitoch ma'achal harbe, so that they don't fall asleep. Everybody knows what's called food coma. We mentioned chulent. Anybody who was ever a madrich knows that the worst time to give a shiur or a sicha is after chulent on Shabbat, because everyone is just falling asleep. Now, the Rashbam is telling us that if you want to keep your children at the Leil HaSeder, don't let them eat, because if they eat, they'll be satiated and they'll fall asleep. So what you have to do is you have to grab the matzah away and say, no, pretty soon we're going to have the matzah ball soup and we'll have a lot of good food, but now we're doing magid. Now we're telling you about Yetziat Mitzrayim. In other words, what is the educational message of the Rashbam in one word? Discipline. Because if until now, in the Rambam and in the Meiri, we spoke about how mitzvot have to be fun and games and enjoyable and positive and genuine excitement, all of that is true. But the Rashbam is adding, if the kid is tired, if he's full and he's going to fall asleep, then you lost him. And this is a real big problem today in modern society, because we live in a democratic society, thank God. And Baruch Hashem, we have a high standard of living, thank God. But children today do not know discipline. Now, I don't know if, has anybody noticed a difference between your younger nieces and nephews and the way children were raised in your generation? It's a one-way street. There's just less and less and less and less and less and less discipline. Today, when you go to a makolet, right, and you see a child saying, Ima, kneli bamba, Ima, buy me bisli, Ima, buy me krembo, Ima, buy me this, buy me that. And so often, parents just don't say no. And I grew up in the 60s, and actually, I spoke about this in last week's shiur, for those of you who were there, that one of the problems that we had growing up, especially in Riverdale was a very liberal neighborhood, where I had a lot of friends who didn't have a bedtime. They didn't have to do their homework. They didn't even have to go to school. You want to go to school, go to school. Don't want to go to school. And everything was done in the name of freedom. So the parents thought. But the children, they grew up with anarchy, with no self-discipline. And the end of the story is, if a child does not know self-discipline, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu all of a sudden at the age of 13 tells him, no, you can't do this or you have to do that, he's not built for it. And that's one of the major problems in Western society, why so many people have a problem with Torah and mitzvot. And what the Rashbam is telling us is there is a time during the Seder, even on Friday nights, a lot of times kids leave the table and they go and play, and the adults talk, and then, okay, fine. But at the Seder, you say, no, now is not a time to go and play. Now is not a time to eat. Now we are talking about Magid and Yetziat Mitzrayim. By the way, I don't know if I ever told you, in 20 years of being a head of a midrasha, there were only 2 girls that I ever had to kick out. Ever tell you the story? No? I won't go into details, but both of them were totally spoiled brats. They were daughters of multi-millionaires. And one of the girls, she used to wake up at 11 o'clock in the morning, and she didn't go to class. I'll never forget, she didn't like the food at the midrashah. This is in Orot in Elkanah. So by the 3rd day, she had a delivery truck come from Yerushalayim to Elkanah, that's near Petach Tikva, a 45-minute drive, to deliver this princess a 5-star hotel lunch. Every day at lunch, the truck would pull up and bring this princess her lunch. And to make a long story short, this girl had no friends, very self-centered, very arrogant, and it wasn't her fault. Her parents never told her no. And when we had a second situation like that, I already knew that it's very, very difficult. And that is what the Rashbam is saying. So that is point number 3. When the Rashbam sees this Gemara, innocent Gemara, that says what? Grab the matzot so that your children don't fall asleep. What does he say? Make sure that they're not satiated so that they'll fall asleep. In other words, his ani ma'amin chinuchi is sometimes you have to say no. Now we're running out of time, so let us go to the Ravid, source number 3. Now, all of you know that the Ra'avad is a commentary on the Rambam. Nevertheless, for educational purposes, I put the Ravid right after the Rashba because he is the opposite of the Rashba. Like everything in life, there is action, reaction, action, reaction. The Ravid says, again, source number 3, what does it mean? Grab the matzot so that the children don't fall asleep. Mimaharin le'echol kedei shelo yishnu. What is mimaharin? We hurry up. Grab matzah. Grab maror. Grab shulchan arech. Hurry up magid. Don't drag magid out because you're going to lose all the children, right? A 5-year-old doesn't have an ice cube's chance in hell of being interested if his 18 or 19-year-old sister comes home from midrashah with all of these nice divrei Torah that you're learning in all these Zoom shiurim, and you prepared for the Seder, and you want to enjoy your divrei Torah, and your parents' divrei Torah, and your older brother's divrei Torah, and this 5-year-old, he's lost. And what the Ravid is saying is, grab the matzot, hurry through Magid, because otherwise you're going to lose the hero of the night. The main character of the Seder is who? The children. Now it's interesting, all of you know that we say in the Haggadah, the more you talk about the Yetziat Mitzrayim and the more Divrei Torah and the more commentaries, the better, right? The Netziv points out that is after the young children have gone to sleep. Catch that? Yeah, of course. We want Divrei Torah and the beauty of the depth of all the Divrei Torah that you have learned and have prepared for the Seder, but not at the expense of the little children. And it's not easy. If you have a family Seder, after this year, most of the Sedarim are going to be pretty small. But usually at a family Seder, you have grandparents, parents, children. You have yeshiva boys, midrashah girls, high school kids, little children. Everybody has totally different needs. And what the Ravid is saying is you have to have realistic expectations. That's his, I believe, in Jewish education. As opposed to the Rashbam, who we saw, who says sometimes you have to say no, discipline. The Ravid, he sees the term grab the matzot so that you don't lose the child. Don't drag out Magid. You have to have realistic expectations. It's like there's a famous story of the Chatam Sofer, who's the rabbi of Pressburg, and a guy comes to the Chatam Sofer and says, you know what? My son, he's 12 years old. He already knows all of Seder, Moed, Mishnayot, Baal Peh. Try it. Start at any Mishnah. My son will finish it off for you. And the Chatam Sofer was not very impressed. I'll add parenthetically that I had 2 sons who went to a special yeshiva, the Barkai schools. Both of them, at the age of 12, 13, knew Seder Moed word for word by heart. To this day, you can start a Mishnah and they'll be able to finish it off. So it's not a Bubba Maisa. I believe that. But the Chatam Sofer was not so excited. The father says, "What? You don't believe it? Test him out. Try it." Chatam Sofer takes the father over to the side and says to him, "Listen, A 12-year-old wants to play. If you force him just to learn, and you don't let him play at the age of 12, he's going to play at the age of 20. And that's exactly what happened. I myself know families who overloaded their children from such a young age with Torah. Everybody wants their child to be the Mashiach. I have a friend whose first name is Mashiach. It's a Sephardic family, talking about high expectations, right? But you can't expect too much of a 12-year-old. Otherwise, you're going to lose him. I'll give you another example. Music. When you're cleaning for Pesach, very often, at least in our house, and I think in most houses, you put on background music. And everybody in the family has a different taste of music. And I remember one of my sons there was a singer, he's still around, but at the time he was a real hippie type singer. His name is Sinai Tor. If you want to YouTube him afterwards, his music is yelling. He yells about being in love with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I still remember one of his songs. It goes like, Bali litzok elecha. Ah! I want to yell out to God. I want to hug God. I love God. And he's just yelling a lot. And my wife turned off the music. And my son turned on the music. And you all know that problem, turning off, turning on. And I took her to the side and said, listen, the chance of a 14, 15-year-old boy liking Avram Fried like you do is pretty small. You like that type of music. Thank God he's listening to religious music. It's Jewish music. It's religious music. He could be listening to Madonna, or who knows what he could be listening to. And that's what the Ravid is saying. You got to have realistic expectations in order not to lose your children. The same thing, for example, regarding yeshiva high schools. We have 7 children, and Bli Ayin Hara, and the 7 children chose 6 different yeshiva high schools. Because each of them really is a totally different world, and that is what Shlomo HaMelech says, Chanoch l'na'ar al pi darko. Every person has different needs. Now, you might want to send them to Harvard or to Merkaz Harav or the top yeshiva, but if they're not there, it's going to boomerang. It's going to cause more harm than good. And that is what the Ravid is saying. Again, what is explanation number 4? Explanation number 4 is grab the matzot from the children, hurry through Magid to get to Motzi, Matzah, Maror, Korech, Shulchan Orech, hurry up through Magid so that the children don't fall asleep. You'll see that? Everybody understand what's going on? Every Rishon goes in a totally different direction on what does it mean grab the matzot based on what he sees in his mind is Jewish education. The 5th and the final explanation with which we finish is Rashi, source number 10. Rashi says, what does it mean grab the matzot so that the children won't fall asleep? Magbihin et ha'ke'ara bishvil tinokot sheyishalu. All of you know, in some of the Haggadot, it says we pick up the matzot, or we pick up the maror, or in other Haggadot we point. Most Ashkenazim point at the maror, point at the matzah zu, maror zu. What is Rashi saying? Grab the matzot, pick them up, make it visually stimulating, and that way you won't lose the children. What Rashi is saying is something very simple educationally. Today, when a child learns history, literature, really almost everything, there is a computer program, it's in color, it's exciting, cutting edge technology, and the only book which is still in black and white is his Gemara. And that's not fair. Children will think that Gemara is boring. And the only way to do that is to stimulate. Now, I'm not saying it has to be necessarily visual stimulation. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said when he heard Reb Chaim the first, Reb Chaim Soloveitchik, and his analytical way of learning Gemara, he said, Reb Chaim and the Brisker method is going to save learning Gemara in the 20th century. And he was right. Because I remember what turned me on to Gemara was my 10th grade Rebbe, who just made it intellectually stimulating. I wasn't so religious. I wasn't a dus, what they call, but it stimulated. I enjoyed learning Gemara. Now, it could be intellectual stimulation. It could be emotional stimulation. My first emotional religious experience was at a Rav Shlomo Carlebach concert. I must have been like 10 or 11. And I grew up in a Yekka community in Riverdale. People are Yekkas. They're pretty stuffy and cold. But he got all of these Yekkas dancing in the aisles. Everyone was singing and dancing, again, showing genuine excitement. And I really had an emotional experience. And that is what Rashi is saying. If you want to keep the kids at the Seder table, and also if you want to keep them interested in Torah, it has to be stimulating, whether it be intellectual, emotional, visual, audio-visual, dramatic, anything, but make sure that it is interesting. To summarize, just like when you see the Rorschach Inkblot, and everybody sees something different based on what they have going on in their mind, when the Rishonim saw this Gemara that says, grab the matzot so that we don't lose our children at the Seder, everybody understands according to their shita in Jewish education. To summarize, the Rambam says, what does it mean, grab the matzot? Make it fun. Have positive association with mitzvot and with their parents. Number 2 was the Meiri. Grab the matzot in genuine excitement. Number 3 was the Rashbam. Grab the matzot away from the children, telling them, no, now is not the time to eat. Or discipline. Point number 4 is the Ravid. The Ravid says, discipline, yes, but too much discipline is going to kill the child. You got to have realistic expectations. Grab the matzah, hurry through Magid to grab the matzah and the maror and all the good food that the child is waiting for. Otherwise, you're going to lose him. Same thing with Torah mitzvot. You got to have realistic expectations of your children. Don't overdo it, especially with your first child. That's where people make the mistakes. That's why some say that the Bechor gets Pishnaim in the inheritance because you made all your mistakes on the first child. And what was explanation number 5? Rashi. Rashi says, grab the matzot, pick up the matzot, visually make it stimulating, and we add on stimulation could and should be also intellectual, also emotional, etc. All of these 5 lessons are very important. And don't forget number 6. Number 6 is daven. You gotta say a lot of Tehillim. You gotta daven well. You also need a lot of patience, because when a 13 or 14-year-old starts rebelling, that doesn't mean that's the end of the game. Continue showing them love, unconditional love. Ride it through. Maybe at the age of 25, he will mature and come back to Torah and mitzvot. But you also need patience, and you also have to daven. Pray a lot to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he should help us out. Raise our children l'Torah, l'chuppah, u'lema'asim tovim. Have a Chag Kasher v'sameach to all of you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Shvat.
My pleasure. Does anybody have any questions? No questions? That's
Send
pretty
my
good.
regards to everyone and my whole families, please.
I will do. Bye, Tzipora.
Thank you.
Okay, good seeing everybody, especially the old Bogrot. Yeah, Racheli. Everybody.
Thank you.
Who is Midreshet Lindenbaum? I guess maybe that's a general thing.